felt.
Well, there you go. You all can't see me yet, but I'm here. Hold on. Oh, and I didn't even have the starting soon thing going, but that's okay because we're starting now. No reason to turn it on at this point. Goodness. I am not ready for stream, but here I am. I mean, I'm kind of ready. Maybe I'm kind of ready. I have a plan for today. Here, let's get rid of some of this. Bring it back to me. Hi, good. My closed captions are working. Looks like everything's working good. I have a plan for today of stuff to talk about. But much of what we're going to be talking about today is going to be kind of get rid of that. Rehashing the conversation from the last stream. Let me see if I can. Is that gonna pull up the thing that I want? No. That's what I want. That's what I want, I think, right there. Yes. So this is kind of just going to be rehashing what we talked about last Friday, because I didn't stream on Wednesday. Sorry that I was not able to stream. Actually, let's do that first. Let me apologize to everyone. Sorry I was not able to stream on Wednesday. Monday, I was doing my workout, and it's just calisthenics, so it's not really very intense, but one of the things that I do is I've got one of those bars that you put over the door, and you do pull-ups, and one of the things that I do is, you got your arms out, and you pull yourself up, and with the bar behind your head, you pull your body up, and put the bar behind your head, and just doing the motion hurts. While I was doing that, my collarbone popped. I didn't know what had happened at the time. I just heard a really loud pop and felt a lot of pain, and so I stopped doing that part of the workout. I did do another set of push-ups and another plank and a few other things afterward, but I shouldn't have done anything. I should have immediately put it on ice, but I didn't realize how severe it was. So for many years, I had noticed that one of my collarbone on the right wasn't sitting in the same place as the collarbone on the left. I don't know what happened or what's going on or how that happened, but several years ago I noticed that my body was uneven in that way. Well, as of Monday, my collarbone is now straight again. I don't know how long it was out of place or misplaced. It seems like a dislocation, and it would have been dislocated for many, many, many years. Because going back several years is when I first noticed that there was the unevenness. But so now it's popped into the right place and is even, but it's extremely painful and has been extremely painful 4 days. So Monday I spent probably about an hour and a half laying down and doing hydroshock therapy where you do ice and then for 15 minutes and then heating pad for 15 minutes and then ice and then heating pad and then ice and then heating pad, and you just, until the pain goes away, you just keep doing that, and it kind of never did. I just, at some point, I had to get back to doing schoolwork because I have a tremendous amount of stuff. Welcome in, Jane, by the way. Great to see you. But yeah, it's probably some kind of dislocation, and it is still very painful. So that's what had happened. It also has made it very difficult to concentrate. So Tuesday, I did a really good job of buckling in and getting a whole bunch of stuff done. More work on Tuesday morning than I typically do before I teach, because I teach in the evening. And I was extremely productive on Wednesday. Instead of doing stream, I worked until 7 p.m. Right, 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. So that I could get the rest of my grading caught up. But part of the reason why I worked so late is because I wasn't very there were lots of periods where it was difficult for me to concentrate. I was in a lot of pain. I had to go lay down for a minute to just get my body to stop being so aggravated. And so anyway, I got lots of stuff done on Wednesday so that yesterday I could finish designing the new class that starts on Tuesday, which I did. I think it was like 6:40 last night. I was officially, had triple checked everything and was finally walking away from the computer done with setting up the course. And I haven't gotten any emails from any students about links not working yet. So far so good. But we'll see. The first few days that it's active, there's usually a bug or two to get worked out, and I haven't had time. What I often do is after the semester begins, I go through the pages and I click all the things, and Canvas gives you a way that you can view everything in student mode. So sometimes the links will work for me because I can go to anywhere or any of the files or any of the classes, but sometimes the links will get mixed up, and the link for one class will get pasted across all of the other classes, and those classes don't have access to that file in this other class, right? I won't notice it unless I'm in student view mode anyways, what I was getting to. So I will at some point be doing that, but not today. I'm streaming. Gosh darn it. Tenekoe, welcome in, Kimatara. Great to see you. Guess you're still getting used to this arrangement again. Yeah, that's what it is. It's like I said, it was out of place for years. And it doesn't stay. So yesterday day before yesterday, right, Wednesday when I woke up, it was dislocated again. So that morning, right, like I didn't even notice at first. I went about most of was up for probably about an hour or two. And then I stopped and looked in the mirror, and I noticed, I was like, oh, it's crooked again. So I took my shirt off, and I rearranged myself and got myself in position and popped it back into the correct place. And I think it's mostly stayed since the last time I've popped it in. But yeah, it's still getting used to being in the right place. All of the muscles that I've been using for years all in the wrong place have all become accustomed to being in the wrong place. They have to get used to being in a new formation now. I should probably go to a doctor. That's a good point. I need to get a new EpiPen. The last time I got an EpiPen was probably 4 or 5 years ago. there's a few other things that I probably want to talk to the doctor about. I don't need to go over all of my medical problems with you all, but there's a list of things that I want to talk to my doctor about. And then it's a good idea. I'm really bad at remembering to schedule that. Maybe make a note to myself, because that is kind of an important thing that I should do. And part of the problem is that I have a hard time spending the time, because it's well, right now my van doesn't work. Actually, that's a whole ass other thing, is I still haven't gotten the water pump yet to replace in my van, so my van isn't driving at the moment. And I don't know that I'm going to have time to even think about that this weekend at all. I'm going to be so busy with getting caught back up with classes. And then next week is the first semester of a new class, so that's going to be kind of intense for that class. Plus, all of my other classes have discussion boards next week, which is, it was unavoidable. There had to be some point that all of the discussion boards lined up all at once, and next week is that week. So it is going to be one of the busiest weeks that I have all semester next week. So I've got that, and next weekend I'll be fixing my van, and then the week after that, maybe I would have time to dedicate 3 or 4 hours to the doctor visit, because it's my doctor's an hour drive away. I'm going to be sitting around in the room for at least 40 minutes before they see me. I won't see them for less than 15 minutes, I can't imagine. So, but at some point I'll make it to the doctor, I guess. My 21st birthday. Oh, wow. Congratulations. 21st birthday is that's a good year. Happy birthday. Happy 21st birthday. Good. Ugh. Hopefully this won't be a terrible year. I don't know, am feeling kind of optimistic lately. I don't know how to encapsulate it. For a long time, for months, I've been very pessimistic, and I've felt very downtrodden, felt very hopeless about our possibilities and our prospects. But there seems to be some kind of shift that I can't really quite put words to yet, but there's a shift that I've felt or noticed that I think that this year has great potential to be better than last year. Right? The bar keeps getting lower. Every year that bar gets even lower for being better than last year. So maybe this is the year we finally turn it around and stop the descent. I'm kind of hoping. No, 21st didn't feel very different for me either. When I was a teenager, I was a miscreant. I got kicked out of my parents' house. I haven't talked about this story in a long time. Right? This is lore that I haven't talked about on stream in several years. I got kicked out of my parents' house when I was 16 years old. Actually, no, it was 17. It was 2 months after I had turned 17. I just turned 17, got kicked out of my parents' house. And so started paying rent much earlier in life than a lot of other people, but I moved in with other kids who were in high school or who were the year above high school age, and some of them were 21 already. So when I was a teenager, I began drinking very regularly. And I don't want to go too much into it, but by the time I was 20, being able to drink a case of beer was not a big deal. And so the year 21, when I was able to buy my own cases of beer, was not that big of a deal, right? By that point. So it didn't feel very different for me. The biggest difference for me was at 24, I got the insurance drop, right? The car insurance costs a little bit less. Though I think that they've changed that now. I believe that, because it used to be different for men and women, and now I think that they've changed it, and they have a standard one age thing, but that might be different from insurance company to insurance company. I don't really know. It's been a long time since I've been that young, and I don't care, so I don't have any reason to know that. But the next big difference for me was probably in my early 30s, around 32 or 33. At that point, people who are much older can't tell that you are still that much younger. You've crossed that threshold. So all of a sudden, people just start to treat you with a lot more respect. At some point, people have enough trouble telling how old you are that they just treat you with respect. It's funny, I wanted to talk about this on stream anyways. I'm not... the way that we treat our youth is criminal, actually, as a society, right? The way that we treat children and teenagers especially is something that I was thinking about, and I wanted to bring up and talk about on stream today. That teenagers are just generally treated with disrespect in culture and society. And for those of you who are in your early 20s, you're still close enough to teen that people who are 45 to 65 can't tell the difference. That they really can't tell the difference between a 20-year-old and a 13-year-old. They start to look kind of the same. So, because of that phenomenon, once you cross that threshold and you no longer look like you might be teenager, once you've gotten far enough past the teenager threshold, then people in society generally start to treat you with a little bit more respect. And I noticed that in my early 30s. All young people are treated with disrespect. Yeah, treated like property. Yes. Well, and that's it's the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because this has to do with how we're conditioned by society. Society conditions us to be like children when we are adults. That we treat children disrespectfully, and this is a long-standing tradition in many societies. I would say most modern Western societies, I think is a safe way to put this. Is there's a general disrespect towards youth and the youth. You're not trusted with any kinds of responsibilities. You're not trusted with truth and knowledge. You're lied to about most of the things about the way that the world works, right? For those of you who are raised in a church, you are taught that there are certain morals that we care about as a culture and society, which is a fucking lie. right? Everything that they teach you as a child in a church turns out to be absolute fucking bullshit. Because the pastor is probably fucking children, right? And there's adultery going on all throughout. They're all a bunch of hypocrites, and you're taught about this. Anyways, I'm getting off track. Children are treated with disrespect in general, and this is a way to get all of us conditioned to being shitty and treating others with disrespect, right? Because there's a material reality to this that goes along with the banality of evil. This is one of the things that doesn't get talked about when we're talking about the banality of evil, that when you do evil things, it does evil things to you. When you treat children disrespectfully, that's bad for you. That's a bad thing that you are doing to you by treating anyone disrespectfully. Anyway, but we get them accustomed to being treated disrespectfully, which is something that we went through, right? And it conditions us to accept a certain kind of abuse, to be conditioned to kind of like the frogs in boiling water, to be conditioned to a greater amount of abuse. Right, so that as you enter into adulthood and your boss and your governor and everybody else is complete, tax time is coming up, right? So in all of the ways that you are just continually, year after year, fucked by society, right? And it actually is an increasing thing. At some point, you get better at dealing with getting fucked by society constantly, but it never abates. It never stops, right? It's a constant thing. When you're a child, it's much less. You're insulated from your parents, who are just lying to you about everything. But then when you get older, you become part of this abusive cycle. And this is why the working class won't realize that they can just seize the means of production. They are all accustomed to systematic abuse and believe that this is inevitable, and they understand that they should expect it, rather than understanding that they could live a different way. They could live in a way where it's not their job to screw over other people. This is part of what we've talked about. The reason why we are oppressed is not because there's a few millionaires and billionaires who oppress us. That's not who does the oppressing. It's working class people. It's insurance adjusters and cops, and it's the working quote unquote class. It's middle class Americans who do the abuse to most of America. It's right. Anyways, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent this early, but I love it. Good. Wondering if you could read my liberalism is the alt-right pipeline on this stream or in the future. Absolutely. I've got, when did you write this one? That's another new one, because I was already, that's not showing the right thing, planning to take a look at, we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this in a minute. And we are going to do the video again, which I'd mentioned on last stream that I might, there is the thing I'm looking for. Come back and do the video again. And that was the plan. That is the plan. I want to shelve this. We'll probably talk about this at some point today, because that ties into the youth, right? And how we treat our youth and the abuse of the youth. And this ties actually really quite in with all of that conversation. We'll do this one again just as to way to set the stage, right? This is a summary of the kinds of things that we were talking about on the last stream. and the stream before that, so this will be a good thing to reinforce the same kind of themes that we want to talk about today. Then we'll watch the video. So Jane, you didn't get to see us watch the video. You get to watch the video with us, unless you really don't want to, and then I'll skip it. But I'd like to watch the video again, because I think that there's a lot of good information in it. With regard to this, right? And this, getting ahead of myself. So those are things that I already wanted to talk about today, and I wanted to talk about this Kiyomitara. I meant to read it before stream, and I don't think I had a chance to actually read it before stream. Yeah, I didn't. And we are gonna again talk more about this too. So I'll pull that one up. And then the older folk get mad when we are rebellious. Yeah, no, and that's part of the cycle. It's really kind of I want to say funny, but it's not funny. But it's ironic, right? There we go. That there's it's not rite of passage. That's not what I'm thinking of. But there's so hopefully this doesn't take too long. This is very Foucault. When Michel Foucault is talking about discipline, in Discipline and Punish, right? Discipline and in the work Discipline and Punish, he describes the all boys school as a kind of example. There's a particular all-boys school in France was really prestigious. I'm pretty sure it's no longer around anymore. Well known for whipping boys into shape, right? This kind of thing. And Michel Foucault does a historical deep dive into this monstrous institution. And part of the way that the institution would operate is much of the discipline and order was maintained by older boys in the school. All of the boys in the school are subjected to some kind of humiliation their first year. And this is just standard across the board. It doesn't matter who your dad is. It doesn't matter how much money they invested in the school. Everybody has to go through some amount of humiliation. But some people get selected in their first year to be the kinds of people to dole out the pain, to dole out the punishment, to dole out the humiliation. And the boys are taught to, they are taught in a very visceral, material way that there is a pecking order, there is a hierarchy. And the higher you are up in the hierarchy, the more you can inflict pain on others. Or really, the real upside is the fewer people who have the power and ability to inflict pain upon you. And the whole system is just this terror show where children are conditioned to abuse other children in this cycle of discipline, so that they're always, and it's important that there's always somebody who is on the out. There's always a bottom of the pecking order. There's always somebody who is the least. And that child in this situation is often not even protected by any of the administration or any of the teachers, or right. It's there has to be somebody who is the example all the time. There needs to be somebody who is constantly being punished, because if you let up on the punishment machine, then you don't have a way to produce more punishers. It's right, and in this way, the people who run the institution don't have to abuse anyone. All they have to do is teach how to do the abuse to a few of them, and it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Sounds like fascism to me, and that literally was Foucault's point. He never got around to making that point clear, but was part of the point that Foucault was trying to make, was that it was an exclusion. It's exclusionary ethics. This is I don't know why there's not a more conversation. Actually, I do know why, because capitalism. Exclusionary ethics is something that capitalism can't have us talking about. Right? Necropolitics is something that capitalism can't have us talking about because it makes very real the way that the machine works. But it's oh yeah, it's I was trying to think of the. Well, that's all right. That's all right. We can just let that tangent go. I think that we done. Anyways, yes, I did pull up the thing. Liberalism is the alt-right pipeline. We'll take a look at that. Good. Yeah, this is going to be a good one. Cool. Dark Gray Otter, welcome in. It's good to see you again. Hope you're having a good one today. Hope you're doing well. Matt, I didn't say hi to you. You snuck in. Welcome in, Matt. I didn't say hi to you yet. I hope you're doing well. I saw that you were in chat, and I meant to say hi to you, and I just never did. So hi. So, I'm getting my act together while I'm trying to think of, and Poor Boy Soul is here too. Welcome in. A Childhood and the Cycle by Ashanti Alston is one of the first things I think about when it comes to the oppression of children. It took me a second to find the title. Thank you for finding the title. Ashanti's awesome. So I know that that's going to be good. This is one that I haven't read yet. But I'm going to go ahead and put this on my list, because that needs to be on my list of things. Why does that keep opening? Nothing. Why is that there? None of you know how to answer that question because you don't see what I'm looking at, but that's okay. I don't need an answer. I just need to move on. Not interested. Thanks. I said not interested. Good. Thank you for sharing it, Poor Boy Soul. I'll check that out. Really good. Really made me think about how I treat kids. And that's something that I'm really very mindful about too. I always try to do my best to empower my students, even when I disagree with them, even when I think that they have dumb shit ideas, right? Yeah, that doesn't matter. What I want is for the kids that come into my classroom to understand one of the very most important things is there are no authorities on anything. They shouldn't take my word for it. Whatever it is, they shouldn't take my word for it, and they shouldn't take anyone's word for it because they're at the front of the classroom. You can't trust those people because they're biased. And even if they're trying really hard not to be, part of what we talk about weeks 2 and 3 is the inability to escape our biases in how we understand, especially morality. Right? When it comes to understanding most things, this is true. But when it comes to understanding how we understand morality, it is especially true that we are biased beings and we have certain generalizations that we have accepted as our moral axioms, and those moral axioms vary from community to community, from person to person, quite extremely, right? And this is part of the problem of rationality. It's one of the things that I plan to talk about today. So I try to remember what it's like to be a student. I try to be mindful of the ways that I was shut down, the ways that I was silenced, the ways that my creativity was curtailed, the ways that my instructors made me feel like an imposter to being there, right? There are some instructors who seem to really enjoy the power dynamics, and they really enjoy being able to be the boss of other people. And I remember those experiences. I remember what it felt like to be a student that was belittled or made to feel stupid on purpose, right? I think that there are some instances where that kind of approach is appropriate, right? Oh, and I'm drawing a blank on her name. The woman, she's really famous. She's a teacher. She little old white lady who taught about racism, and she would make people wear collars, and then make her students, right, they would abuse the other people in the collars, or maybe sometimes it was by eye color. What is her name? Anyway, some of her teaching tactics were a little belittling, right? But there is, I think, a time and place for those kinds of tools too. Just not in my kind of classroom, and not in this kind of environment really either. I try to keep this space, this streaming space, kind of like a classroom that you would find in a university, except that I'm going to say bad words a lot more than foul language, excuse me. It's probably a more appropriate way to put that. Yeah, Karl Marx isn't an authority on Marxism. Well, maybe was. Yeah, maybe was. Hello, welcome in, Nova Rider. That's good. It's good to see you. How is life in the United States of Nazi states? Well, not so good. But as I was saying earlier on stream, I have some reason to feel optimistic lately, and I don't even know why. Like an impasta before. Thank you for the pun, Matt. Even comes with an emote. That's awesome. We're all one scummy insurance decision away from homelessness. Yep. But the libs don't want us to talk about the healthcare. No. Teacher, can I go to the toilet? Sure. I let my students do whatever they want to. They don't have to ask my permission to leave the classroom. Students don't leave my classroom, though. And this might not surprise all of you, but generally, the first week or two, most of my students just think it's like a regular class. But by the time they've attended the third class, they understand that what we are here to do is entirely different than anything that they've done before. So students generally don't want to leave my class. This is a little bit of a brag. I was going to say this is not to brag, but then I realized it kind of is. This is a little bit of a brag. I noted before that some of my classes are 2 hours and 40 minutes long. And when I teach those classes, there's a trend, and it's happened over and over and over. It's been a long time since I taught one in live person, but when I teach them in live person, there's always at least one smoker, usually 3 or 4 smokers in every class, and 2 hours and 40 minutes is a long time to go for most smokers to not have a cigarette. So we usually have some kind of break in the middle of class, the first few weeks of class, for the smokers. But generally, after we get, I would say week 5 or 6 is when students just become enwrapped, where they come into the classroom ready. They want that they've done the reading. They know the kinds of stuff that we're going to be talking about. They cannot wait to talk about it. Right? They are excited to give their opinion and to have some back and forth. And then all of a sudden, everybody forgets about the cigarette break. And, it happens every semester where we just get going and nobody wants to stop. Nobody wants to interrupt the conversation. So a little bit of a brag. Scenes for everyone, everything. I really miss in-person classes. That's something that I would really like to be working toward, but it's kind of a back burner thing right now. Because I've talked about this, but we'll get to the content in a little bit, everyone. Thank you for just letting me chat for a little bit. But point now where I'm kind of close to paying off my debts. Oh, I don't think I had even mentioned this. I paid off 2 of my credit cards. Yay! And they've actually been paid off. I paid them off the end of last year. Then had to go see my family for my mother's funeral and or my memorial service. Excuse me. She was cremated. And so that put a bunch of money on the credit card, but then I paid it right back off when I came back. So I still have 2 credit cards that I have money on, but I'll pay those off this year. And those will be all wrapped up, and then I won't have any more debt. But I keep having problems with this van, and I really don't want to have to buy a new vehicle, but I might have to finance a new vehicle. Anyways, if I don't have to finance a new vehicle, then I could start looking for some other place to move to, some other living situation. I'll be able to afford rent, right? Because my debts are terrible enough that if I was paying rent, I would not have been able to pay off any of my credit cards, right? If I had been paying rent for the entire time that I've lived here with my roommates, I would not have been able to pay off my debt. I would probably only be in worse debt at this point because I wasn't making enough money to live. So that's something that I am considering. There's nowhere that I can teach here in person, but I would really like to teach somewhere in person. So that's something that in the future, right? I'm kind of not near that yet, but that's a long-term goal for me that I'd say in the next 2 to 4 years. I would like it to be 2 years, but I don't think that that's likely. But I think that 4 years is a reasonable time frame for me to be thinking about some place to be where I could actually have that opportunity to teach in person. I do allow my students to snack in class, yes. The hockey players in the back are packing a lip. I don't tell people they can't dip. So I do have people who dip in the class every now and then. But that's not really very common. Well, I don't know. That depends. I say it's not really very common, but now that I think about it, it's not that uncommon, right? If I'm teaching 3 classes, I probably have one dipper in those 3 classes. Maybe, right? Not always, but probably at least one. Sometimes I've had 3 or 4 dippers all in one class. So that does happen, but usually it's less. Yeah, you don't have to worry about hiding your snacks in here. Snack away, poor boy soul. DJ Che, welcome in. I didn't get the raid. Something's going on with my commands today, because I didn't hear you come in with the raid. Welcome in, DJ Che. I hope you're having a great day, a fantastic. Hope you had a good stream. Good to see you. Let's give a shout out to DJ Che. Those of you who are not following, please go follow my friend DJ Che. They are a comrade and awesome, and I love their stream. Good. Let's get into some of the content for today. Philosophy question. I used 500 points for a philosophy question. Did you? Events. No, it's not an event. I believe you, I just don't see it, Nova Rider. Where would it... Why? Yeah, just paste it again in the comments. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened with that, because I don't see it showing up at all. Thank you for letting me know. Something is wrong with my Firebot. Can somebody type nonviolence into the chat? And or ACAB, either one. Nonviolence is the one that I'm most concerned with, because I think I fixed it so that it doesn't duplicate. But I can't do it.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none.
So I did not fix it.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none.
What have I done? Oh no. Good. Well, then no, there was 3 instances of it. Maybe... I don't know.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none.
Okay. So it is fixed, right? It's because it triggered for each time that you all triggered it, but it used to trigger itself. So when somebody in chat would trigger it, then it would do the thing and put the thing in chat, and then that would trigger itself again. Now I think I have fixed that part. And they're all on delay. They all have a 10-minute delay, but they're different, right? The with or without the dash, and violent and violence. Which you all did, right? We got non-violence, non-violence, non-violent, and then non-violent. You all nailed it. You got all of them, so that's why we got them all that triggered right after each other, I think. Yeah, that's Kwame Ture. Who is we've got an emote for Kwame Ture too. And if you are not familiar with Kwame Ture, if you have never heard of Kwame Ture, let me go pull up my favorite. I think it's just called Ture Speaks. Maybe it's in my stream things here. Yeah, Kwame Ture Speaks. This is the one. This is the fire. if you have never never watched Kwame Ture speak, this is probably my favorite. What moral responsibilities do countries have when they protect or recruit scientists who were involved in crimes against humanity? Nazi scientists and the American recruited after the war. This is let me put this in a thing for Nova Rider here. Thank you for putting it in chat again, Nova Rider. I appreciate that. I've got a question thing here. Let's see. Okay. Good. So, what moral responsibility do countries have when they protect or recruit scientists who were involved in crimes against humanity? Is the question. Right. So, the ethics professor would answer this first by saying that the moral responsibility would entail not ever hiring those people in the first place. Right, that's step one. Number one, no moral nation should have ever justified that in the first place. No science, no research is so good. But this is a really good example of consideration that we might consider one like Beyond Good and Evil that we've talked about with Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche writes in the book Beyond Good and Evil about the erroneous tendency for humans to place certain things in culture and society above scrutiny. So above the realm or beyond the realm of good and evil. This is the camp of things that we would be concerned about within the realm of good and evil, but we are not going to question state. We are not going to question capitalism. We are not going to question authority, right? And these things are propped up and considered beyond good and evil and are never considered. And this is the kind of mindset that allows us to get locked into the banality of evil. That's the second Hannah Arendt banality of evil mentioned today, where we have systems, and those systems are political, or they're economic, or it's just where you work, right? And we don't think we what's the right way to say this? We fail to recognize that situation and all other situations actually is a moral situation, right? Is something that has moral responsibility. And this, again, is going to the insurance adjusters and the police officers and the landlords and the other people in our society who believe that they are doing the right things because they are doing what society has conditioned them to always do. But what they are doing is oppressing everybody else. That they are the oppressors among us. But those people don't recognize what they're doing as being morally substantive. This is the whole point of this, right? What we were talking about all last stream was this detachment where moral agents believe that they can be objective decision makers, where the people who make moral decisions are of the myth they have led themselves to believe because of our individualistic society. They have fooled themselves into believing that they are an autonomous decision maker, a being who can objectively evaluate states of affairs and then act in accord with some kind of rationalist framework, in accord with some kind of rationalist moral theory. And that whole idea is actually insane. And I'm not using this ableistly. What I mean is ourselves from the material conditions, and we can arrange moral ideas and construct moral frameworks on moral principles and rationally deduce moral things about them divorced from the material world. Right, but you can't do that. The trolley problem doesn't make sense. Oh, I've got this here. Right, it's not only that our minds reject the false dilemma, though we do and should. That's not the only problem, right? It's not only that our minds reject the false dilemma that's given to us by the trolley dilemma. Pull the lever or don't pull the lever. Though we do and should, but our minds cannot actually consider moral agents impartially. Right? We cannot consider others, and this is a very important realization. We cannot consider others as moral beings impartially. Right? That's but we believe that we can, and I'd mentioned this that this is wrong about the way that ethics teachers teach ethics. Is that we entertain this idea at all? That we entertain rational frameworks? That we entertain the idea that we can be divorced from our material conditions? Because we can't, and none of that makes sense. It's wholly incoherent. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. Which is going back to here now, right? So the reason why people can believe that certain things are justifiable or certain things are beyond good and evil is because those people believe that some things are divorceable from the material world of moral reality, right? But that's not ever true. The material world of moral reality is the only real thing. This is something that I have posited over and over and over. Metaphysically, there is no more real truth which exists in your life than the relationships, the moral relationships that you have to others in the world, in the time and place in which you exist. Metaphysically speaking, everything else is not as important, is inconsequential in comparison to that very concrete, very real thing about the world that most of us don't pay much attention to, because it doesn't have anything to do with the world of economics, which you have to be able to navigate to be able to pay your rent and survive in this world, right? And it's all part of how we're conditioned to exist. We are not conditioned to exist in the moral world with the moral others with which we exist in time and place. We are taught to exist in this realm of national fervor, in this realm of economic competency, in this realm of academia. And all of these things are just pretend constructs that are just mere shadows of the real world. And this is a much larger analogy than Plato's cave analogy, much more profound, right? The things that we believe are real about the world really are just wisps and shadows. And we don't spend any time in the actual real world. Not really. Most of us, anyway. Okay. Among Us. Like you guys recruited the same scientists use hydrogen cyanide on my people in the camps in Norway. Yeah. That person was what's the term? It's a part of Operation Paperclip, right? For those of you who are not familiar with the history that Nova Rider's talking about, this is all Operation Paperclip, right? Where the United States military went over to Nazi Germany and they got a whole bunch of assets, those assets being people in a lot of cases, and brought those assets back to the United States to be scientists, to live out their lives in relative comfort because they're given a government job and paid a salary and given freedom, like they weren't Nazis who were guilty of literal war crimes, even though they literally were. Yeah, incoherent is a good replacement for insane. Yeah. And that's it. It's really absurd is another good word, but a lot of times people don't get the power of the word absurd. It's used in a colloquial way that just means kind of silly and doesn't encapsulate, right? For those of you who remember, does anybody remember Tiny Toons? For those of you who remember Tiny Toons, Go-Go Dodo is a good example of the absurd. Because Go-Go Dodo does some silly things, but is way more, right? What Go-Go Dodo is and does is something that defies reality, right? Is constantly breaking what's real. By drawing attention to the paradoxes in how we understand the world. I thought that was a really pretty groundbreaking show back in the day. And they didn't do nearly enough episodes with Go-Go Dodo, but I get it, right? Actually, that's really quite trying to pull off that kind of character is a little bit big of an ask, I think. The trolley problem puts the onus on us when the dumb train can stop itself. Right. Excellent. Well, and that's the real solution to the trolley problem is building a guillotine up the tracks. Right. But it's something that Matt often brings up is that trolley does have its own set of brakes, right? And I like that way of thinking, but for me, I think it's more about That there's a trolley on the tracks is the problem for me, right? It's not just that the trolley has its own brakes and can stop itself. I think that that's a good way to think about it. But if the tracks are being repaired, which they are, that's the trolley problem, is there's 5 workers on one side and 1 worker on the other. If the tracks are under repair, why is a trolley coming down the tracks right now? Right? And what I'm trying to get to is pointing to authority, and I'm pointing to the state. I'm pointing to the systems of necropolitics that we have established that are running amok, right? This is a way that we might think of market economy, that we humans invented tools to help us. And the market was one of those tools that we invented to help us to navigate the world and exchange and economics. And that tool has taken on a life of its own. And that tool now rules our lives, right? And it is a runaway machine that sure might have brakes, but shouldn't be operating in the first place because there are people on the fucking track, right? That the disconnect from management and authority and that lack of communication that all have to be implied for there to be 6 people working on the track and a trolley coming at the same time, right? That the situation itself is beyond absurd, and we should have never gotten to this point. And that's the thing that I kept trying to say on the last stream that I couldn't articulate, that I couldn't figure out how to say it. That we shouldn't be at the point where we are asking whether or not to pull the lever. We need to go back, right? We needed to start dismantling the whole rail, right? But we can't just. And this is really why Kimitara's analogy works. The way that they've constructed the trolley problem in their article works really well in a way that I was kind of missing out on when I was talking about it last on stream. Because we can't just dismantle the track. Because it's intertwined with our lives in very intimate ways. Here, let me pull it up. Right, here we go. Right, as colonial subjects, we learn from a young age that the track is not something that we are tied to. Rather, the track is attached to our spines. As we grow, the train comes closer and closer and closer, right? We cannot ignore the fact that the way that this thing is constructed intertwined into our lives, right? We can't just disassemble it. We can't just start ripping up the tracks because it's because of our closeness, because of our relationship to it. I agree. I just see the train as the authority / government. Right. And that's and I'm not trying to push back on your analogy. And that's, we all have great ways that we talk about this. And the trolley problem is really useful, right? And this is the fun thing, that on one hand, I'm spending a lot of time talking trash about where to go. Talking trash about the trolley problem itself, right? Here it is, a justification for asshole instructors like me who force students into these kinds of moral dilemmas, right? This is something that I want to be kind of accountable to, because I am still perpetuating this narrative, this myth that morality can somehow be abstracted away from the material conditions. When we are having conversations about the trolley problem, and this is the other point to Kayamatara's article that I haven't been able to get back to yet, that the conversation about nonviolence misses, right? Whether we use that the conversation about nonviolence misses, right? Whether we use violent
vulnerable people, but inevitably, I know so many people that won't take any of this sitting down. And so I just look at history. I look at the demands for power and villainy and violence, like having a monopoly on violence. And when that is questioned under imperialism and white supremacy, a lot of fucked up things can happen. But I've talked to so many people over the last days, weeks, and so many people are like, I don't know how you can go back to normal. Like, there isn't, like, this is normal for this country, for this land.
Right. I really wanted to take a little bit of time and speak a little bit to this. For your white liberal friends, the reason why they are still just waiting is they are waiting for things to go back to normal, because they are under the false impression that that as soon as Trump is no longer president, all of this stuff is going to go away. And then we'll just have another Joe Biden, or whoever the next person is that's Joe Biden is going to be in the office, and then they can go back to brunch. That they can go back to not caring. They can go back to, and this is what I was talking about on last stream, they can go back to enjoying their comic books and playing their video games and watching their movies without having to feel bad about little brown children in some other part of the world, right? And they really just want to be plugged back into the Matrix. Right now, ICE and what they are doing, the destabilization that they are creating in the nation, is disrupting those people's Matrix trip. And they don't want to wake up. They want to continue to be in the Matrix. They understand, right? This is the strategic ignorance that we've talked about. They understand. People in the imperial core understand, right? That what they enjoy comes from the exploitation of others. And this isn't necessarily true for everyone. There are especially a lot of young people who are still not figuring it out. But it's common for me, and I've talked about this as a professor, for my students to come into my classroom already aware that climate change is going to ruin their lives, that AI data centers are creating catastrophic climate change, that homelessness is violence. They come into my classroom knowing those things. I don't have to teach that to them. They know those things. So we are getting to a point where it's impossible for people to continue to feign the ignorance that their white imperial privilege is exploitation, and comes and has always come at the exploitation of other people in other parts of the world. That's the reality of capitalism, sweaty. And for you to enjoy your comic books and your video games and your Disney and your all of those streaming services are all machines of exploitation. Unavoidably. Things will get worse if we don't build something from the ground up. It doesn't matter who is in power. That is the thing, right? That is exactly right. It doesn't matter who is in power. Having Joe Biden or Trump both of them had increasingly strict border policies, increasingly dehumanizing border policies under Obama and under Biden and under Clinton and under all of those other people who were just doing the capitalist, imperialist, neoliberal thing. And anybody that we put in the office of presidency, anybody that we elect to governor or mayor or is going to be part of that machine. Mamdani is better than the other candidate, sure, right? We can talk about harm reduction, and we have. We've talked about how there are people in New York whose material conditions are actually actively better now under Mamdani, and that's a very real thing that we can't just ignore. We shouldn't not care about people's immediate material conditions, but Mamdani is not going to make us a socialist nation. It won't do anything to destabilize the levers of power, won't do anything to destabilize the capitalists who are in control of those levers of power, won't do anything to restructure the government, won't do anything to restructure how we elect our elected officials. No change will have actually happened other than the material conditions of a few 100,000 people in New York will be slightly better than under some other candidate, right? That's the reality. There is a material condition for those people, but there's not revolutionary potential there. There's not change. We're not making the world a better place. We're not fighting. We're not destabilizing. We're not creating the material conditions. Because that's what Jane is on about over here is, right? This is about making the material conditions for revolution. When we are feeding ourselves and housing ourselves and have set up systems of health care for ourselves, right? When we have accomplished these kinds of things, then there's nothing that the government does that matters. It doesn't matter who's in charge. It doesn't matter how the government is structured or organized. If we are feeding ourselves and housing ourselves and providing health care for ourselves, then we have created the material conditions for actually accomplishing revolution, for actually allowing the proletariat to seize the means of production. Yeah, electoral politics is nothing but a distraction. It's a circus, right? And is it Dostoevsky that talks about religion as a circus and government in general as a circus and all of these things? A lot of times we are spectators, just sitting in some circus being entertained. And this is the manufacturing. I think it's Dostoevsky that casts this analogy, right? And this is it's manufactured consent. It's the idea of manufactured consent before long before that other piece of shit came up with the idea. Chomsky. That's who I was talking about. As leftists, it's critical we ban jokes. Wait, they're a slippery slope to joy, and joy is suspicious. Humor distracts from the revolution and creates dangerous levels of serotonin. From now on, all laughs must be pre-approved by the dialectical committee. Knock, knock, who's there? Silence. Silence who? Correct. Comedy is canceled, comrade. Correct. Good. That's funny. In an appropriate time for me to pop this in, because we should have, and that's right. That real circus is the people who are showing up to the ICE protests in the onesies and in those giant inflatable costumes. That's chaos. That's good stuff. That's chaos magic. For those of you who are familiar with the term, that's practical chaos magic. Going out and doing that kind of stuff is really messing with them and messes with the narrative, and it creates, what is it? It disrupts the general narrative of the power dynamic. And I'm stealing this from somebody else's video. I can't remember who it was that was doing a video on this on YouTube. If I think of it, I'll give them credit. But what they were talking about is simple things like that. When we demonstrate in non-traditional methods, when we use non-traditional methods, the state doesn't know what to do. When we use non-traditional methods, it's more difficult for the state to cast the narrative of the dissenters are bad and the police are here to save us all, right? And that's, I think that we are seeing a big shift. Maybe this is part of the shift that's made me feel more optimistic, is we are seeing a shift in the difficulty for the media to keep that lie up. That what the police, right, in the police are shooting themselves in the foot in the perfect way, because if the police were serious about maintaining a state monopoly on violence, what the police should be doing is standing against ICE. When the police support ICE, right, those fucking clowns, the ICE are so inept at their jobs, they're so evil at their jobs, and they're so obviously both, that it is a dead giveaway. Right? That's always been police brutality. This has always been the reality of police brutality, is that they are inept and corrupt. Right? That's the ethos of police, basically, is that they are inept and corrupt. The only thing that they do competently is cover their own asses. Really. Now that it's becoming so much more obvious, right? News outlets are having a hard time spinning the narrative of making the protesters the bad guys, right? And it's the same thing that they did with Martin Luther King, right? This is the meme of Martin Luther King getting interviewed by the white reporter, right, who's looking in the background at the flipped over cars and on the buildings on fire and all the other stuff, right? As Dr. King is saying, it was another peaceful protest, right? This meme is the narrative that the media has given about all dissenters. All dissenters. This has always been the meme, right? And that just isn't working anymore. When you've got so many teenagers, right, who are just out there trying to protest against war, and people are showing up and trying to do violence to the teenagers, right? How are you going to turn those into the bad guys? Right? Clearly the adult who showed up and picked a fight with a bunch of teenagers who are protesting against war is the fucking bad guy. That's the asshole. It's obvious, and you can't, there's not enough substance there for you to wrap that turd in enough glitter and in whatever else you use to shine up a turd to make it presentable to the public. Nobody's buying that anymore. There have been a lot more pushback, and It's because they have no other choice but to push back even slightly. Yes, right. In the few places where police have acted in contradiction to ICE, I believe that's it. That is exactly what's going on. Is it's a place where the police go, we are about to lose control. We, the police, are going to lose control here if we don't change our where we are standing on this line. I think that that's exactly right. Plan is to do evil, but pretend it's necessary. Right. Again, necessary and beyond good and evil. This is right. We often don't have the opportunity to talk about the evil of policing because nobody wants to entertain. It's something that's beyond. It's necessary for our societies, despite the fact that it's not. Our societies have existed for hundreds of thousands of years without police. That's a relatively new. That's only a few hundred years old in the way that we know of policing now. Right. So let me thank you for the follow. I just got another follow from somebody. So thank you for the follow, whoever just followed. Let's get back to this video. Right. So I should have probably gotten back to this sooner. We'll finish. Let Prince Shakur finish up what they're gonna say, and then we are gonna watch the Anarch video. We're getting kind of late in the day, but not too late. We're still good on time, I think.
And with history repeating itself, we have to look back and see that any freedom, any human rights that's been achieved since the inception of this project is achieved through death, through the ability to resist, through the ability to defend yourself and other people. And the fact that more people are taking seriously the fact that we have to build that capacity, something is changing.
I'm going to need you to be a little bit more clear about that, Navy. That is right. Why is removing murderers and rapists a bad thing? What do you mean? Right? Are you trying to defend ICE? Because ICE isn't doing any of that. Right? You've seen the statistics that say 97% of the people that are in ICE custody right now have no criminal record. Like, not just not have committed violent crimes, that not murderers and rapists, but literally committed no crime whatsoever. So maybe you want to clarify that a little bit, or let me make sure. Let me go ahead and get ready to deal with this. We'll be ICE has shown murderers and rapists they have arrested, like one or two. Have they? Have they, though, actually? Have they, Navy? That is right. Have they? Well, and like, ICE is breaking United States law. What is your pushback for that? Navy, that is right. What is your pushback for ICE is breaking United States law against United States citizens? Is violating United States citizens' sovereignty, violating their Fourth Amendment rights? What's your defense for them acting unconstitutionally? I just told you. What do you mean, what laws are they violating? Literally, they've murdered people in the street without due process. right? That's one thing that they've done. Not to mention that they've illegally detained people, not to mention that they have illegally entered people's premises, not to mention that they've illegally entered people's vehicles, right? They have broken lots of law, and not just lots of laws, they have violated the fucking Constitution. So again, what is your pushback to the fact that ICE continually breaks the law and violates United States citizens' sovereignty? Violates United States citizens' rights. What's your pushback for that? Cricket. They have 2 murderers. What? They have 2 murderers, I agree. But the masses voted for those who Biden let in to be removed. But the masses voted for those who Biden let in to be removed. That doesn't make any sense. Masses voted for those who Biden. Oh, that's what you meant by 2. They have 2 murders. Right. But, well, and that's, I mean, 1 is 1 too many. Right? Like, 1 is 1 too many. I'm still trying to understand, voted for those who Biden let in to be removed. Are you talking? See, and this is a nonsense thing. Vet is right. Do you believe that Biden let people in? Right? Do you not know anything about Biden's border policies? Biden was more harsh on border control than Trump was in Trump's first presidency. So Biden let them in is a lie that you said. So here you are. Biden let them in is a lie that you said. Why are you lying about the reality of what happened? Because the reality was that Biden was tougher on the border and tougher on immigration than Trump was in Trump's first presidency. Right? And you've definitely entered in the wrong room. Nobody is here is going to defend Biden. I've spent 30 minutes talking about United States presidents and how they are evil and how this has been an evil problem where we are dehumanizing people and treating people as though they are cattle, or be worse, actually. We are dehumanizing people and have always been dehumanizing. We did it under Obama. We did it under Clinton. We did it under all of the other Democratic presidents. Nobody here is going to defend any of them. Biden opened borders. What the fuck do you even mean by that? Biden didn't open the borders. That's a talking point that Trump says that doesn't cohere with reality. Everybody knows that that is not a true statement. Like, that is a thing that Trump says that isn't true, has never been true. Biden didn't open the borders. The borders have never been open. We allow 1,000 and some change people through the border every year. Right? Do you know anything about immigration policy? So millions did not come in under Biden? No. 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 Right? How, what do you think the population of the United States is? Right? You know what? It doesn't matter. it doesn't matter, right? See, here we're going to get more of the garbage. You're not here in good faith. This doesn't have to do with what I want to talk about today. Maybe we'll entertain you some other time. But for now, we're just going to... yeah, we'll just do that. That's fine. That wasn't a good use of our time. It was a little bit fun for a little bit, but no, it was only 30 minutes. So they might come back, but I doubt it. But I didn't want to just ban, you know. We'll give them the opportunity to come back and say dumb shit again later, I guess. We'll decide if we want to entertain it then, or if we'll just ban them then. I don't know. When it comes to how I decide how to deal with trolls, it really is, I have no plan. I've got no strategy. It really is just flying by the seat of my pants, shooting from the hip. Just however I feel at the moment. But we pretty much got to the end of Prince Shakur's video. So but I'll share it again. Here, let me this. The reason why I keep talking about sharing this, I shared this last time, and I should have spoken more specifically to this. This is a succinct argument that is also an emotional argument. This is a good opportunity to share a very important perspective on our relationship to state. Right? Necropolitics, and getting people to understand necropolitics, and that it has always been this way. Right? That's I think one of the really profound takeaways that you get from necropolitics. It's not just like when you understand the disgusting nature of choosing who lives and dies, right? In this very very real, very material kind of way. But that it is a system. That it is a systematized way of allotting goods and resources and making sure that there are certain winners and losers in society, right? It's clear that this is a long-standing trend. You can, when you look at necropolitics, at what it is, you can't help but see the history, right? And that it's always been that way. And not just United States, too. States as we know them, right? In the Machiavellian sense, going back to before Machiavelli wrote The Prince. That's the reality. What Machiavelli is writing about is the maintaining of the right to organize necropolitics. That's what The Prince is about, is how do leaders maintain the power and authority to be the power and authority over your necropolitics? Because as I'd mentioned before, as we talked about on last stream, scarcity has always been a reality of most human civilizations, right? For most of human history, having enough has always been kind of a concern. So necropolitics is not new to communities. Communities have always, throughout all of human history, had a time where they've had to come together and talk about their limited resources and how they are going to allocate their resources that are probably not going to be enough for everyone. But everybody in these communities used to come together and have these conversations with each other about who was going to be the winners and losers, right? And it was very intimate. It was something that everybody was taking part in. But now we're so alienated from it. We don't even understand that these kinds of decisions are being made for us. Well, that, I still haven't gone back to readdress the young people and that they know that they benefit from imperialism. Because those ideas are kind of incongruent. What I mean by that is, well, that's not really, no. I don't need to work that out right now. No, I don't even need to worry about that. Let's go to this video. Let's do this instead. Let's finally get back to the Anarch video. There's just so much to be thoughtful about. There's so much that I had planned to talk about today, and a lot of I've been derailed several times. When I lost power, that was really the worst derailing. Let me take a look at my notes. What is it that This is it. In fact, let me not go to Anarch. Let me do something else. I'll come back to Anarch. I want to get to Anarch, but I want to get there the right way. I don't want to just jump into it. So let me pull up this. So the problem. Here's the problem. Here's part of the problem. Here's part of the problem. Thank you. I will when I go back over to Anarch. Right, here it is. Okay, so young people seem to understand. And you know, this is my anecdotal experience. The students that I have as an instructor, young people seem to understand that their privilege in America comes at the expense of exploitation. This is something that most college students in my class, whatever their ages are, seem to have no problem understanding. Either they already understand it before they get into my class, or by the time we start talking about it in the discussion boards, they understand it. Well, with my students, a lot of older people do. There's a reason why I'm focusing on younger people. I don't know if this is too reductive, but many of those same individuals who understand that their privilege comes with exploitation, many of those same people still have a hard time understanding how they are directly responsible for that exploitation. And the disconnect, again, I'm trying to avoid reductivism, but the disconnect, I believe, has to do with our representative democracy and how we, as a culture and society, think about leaders. Because I'm trying to avoid making sweeping judgments, because I'm trying to speak to an overall kind of attitude without painting people who have this attitude in a broad paint stroke, right? Without making a monolith of those people that have this attitude, right? So it's nearly impossible, because I'm trying to make generalizations about this group while also not trying to make overly generalized generalizations about them. So there's a sense of maybe national accountability, right, or responsibility, where young people seem to understand that their privilege comes with exploitation, and they blame America. They blame Trump, or they blame the leaders. They blame people who have been in charge. And there seems to be some sentiment. This isn't widely common, but it's not uncommon among people that have this attitude. There's a sentiment that if we only had the right people in charge, if only we had the right leaders, if only our leaders were actually doing the right moral thing, then things would be fine. Then things wouldn't be so bad, or then maybe we could turn this around. And that's a mistake, right? And that's why I mean is they understand that their privilege comes with the exploitation, but they have a hard time accepting their own personal responsibility for that exploitation, because there's the middlemen in between, right? They don't have control, they believe, because this is also a myth, that they don't have control over what the government or state does. They should. That's how states and governments are supposed to, in theory, work. Back when we first started to invent states to manage our affairs, they were supposed to work for the people, by the people, right? But they don't anymore, and they haven't for a long time. So there's a shift in how they understand the moral responsibility. Right. Am I culpable for the exploitation? Yes. Well, to some degree, right? So morally speaking, the way that I would recommend thinking about this, morally speaking, you are morally culpable when you have an alternative for your behavior that you know about. You have to have knowledge of some other thing that you could have done other than what you did for the state of affairs that we find ourselves in today. So, or it is not the case that everybody in America is guilty or culpable, right? Children can't be held to any kind of standard because they're not even treated with any kind of respect. Nobody takes them seriously. Nobody listens to them. Nobody gives them any kind of responsibility, right? They don't have any say in how things are done, or in their lives, or in the government, right? But the rest of us have some amount of freedom with how we conduct our affairs. It's really more about the knowledge. That's what it comes down to, is, right? I can't say on your behalf, actually, Jane, whether or not you are somebody that is guilty, especially with being as young as you are. You've only been considered a quote-unquote adult for a few years. Some people won't even consider people under 21 adults, so congratulations, all of the sudden now you are, right? In the eyes of those people. And the degree to which you are culpable has to do with the degree to which you knew you could do something different than you were doing and then chose not to, right? So if I could use myself as a good example, right? I still go to work and work at my job. Some part of me understands that as long as I continue to go to work and pay my bills, I am still upholding all of the systems of capitalism. That's a reality that is true. I understand my relationship to capital, and I understand that I do perpetuate the system of capital. But here's the thing. Let's not get too caught up in this, right? Because because it doesn't matter, right? This is we're shifting accountability. This is like blaming American consumers on climate change, right? To some extent, individual shoppers who continue to buy fast fashion or continue to buy plastic straws or continue to, right, to some extent, the individual consumers are to blame. To some extent, the individual consumer is to blame. But the companies that are making the things, right, they are actually to blame. Now, these individuals share some culpability, but we shouldn't string these people up, and these people shouldn't feel bad because they can't control what companies make or how companies do their business. Or they don't know that they can, because I understand the nature of economics to work a different way, actually. We could hold our companies accountable. We could do things to make them, to force them, to coerce them to do things a certain way. We could. There are mechanisms. We can pass laws, or we can stop buying their goods, BDS, right? There are things that we can do to some extent, but most people don't have knowledge about those kinds of things or their own relationship with regard to these things. So I would say, Jane, you probably share some amount of culpability in all of the horrible things that are going on. But, right, we're talking about a minuscule amount of culpability that is a candle compared to the sun of Israel and the United States government and Exxon and Monsanto, right? Those companies are evil and are doing evil. Are some of us contributing to some of that evil? Yes. Yes, we are. And is some of that evil unavoidable? No. That's the point. But most people don't understand how to avoid, or that we can do things a different way. So that's really, I think, where I am on that. I'm at the jarring stage where people only hold me responsible when I'm in trouble, but a child when I have an opinion. Right. Yeah. And it's really such a frustrating place to be. And this is, again, going back to empowering my students. What I was talking about on stream, or in class, I do that sometimes. In class last, I was, I talk about gaslighting, and I talk about gatekeeping, and I talk about how when you, I point to my students, when you go out in the world and you're advocating for the things that you believe in, people are going to shut you down. People are going to tell you that you're wrong. People are going to tell you that you don't have a right to have an opinion. And I want you to be prepared for those people so that you can tell them that your opinion does matter and that they should take you seriously and that you do have a valuable input, right? And that you should feel confident being able to express yourself, right? That's one of the things that I really focus a lot in my class, is getting my students comfortable talking about how they feel about stuff they're uncomfortable talking about. And then I get them to be confident about expressing what is right or wrong with regard to those things. And then I give them tools so that they can defend themselves with objectifiable evidence and with facts and with reason that is actually going to be moving and convincing, right? I empower them with the tools, not just the logic and not just the facts and information, but with the confidence to understand that you shouldn't be gaslit by anybody. You should not be felt, to me, you should not be made to feel like your opinion is childish. You are valuable. Period. And how you feel matters. Period. Especially in matters that affect your life. Lifestyles won't get us anywhere. A lifestyleism won't get us anywhere. It's negligible. Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? So there is some culpability, right? But the culpability that the average person has, the average American even, is pretty negligible. So like the average person in the globe, their culpability isn't zero. But it's probably a lot less than the average American, because in the imperial core, we have more access to the levers of power. We have more ways to influence each other, right? We have the ability to come together into communities and to peaceably assemble and to support and uphold each other, which is not something that everybody has in all the other parts of the world, right? So I think that the people who enjoy the spoils of imperialism have a little bit more culpability living in the imperial core, but that culpability is still pales in comparison to the sun that is their own governments, or even their own state government is probably engaging in more necropolitics and in more evil shit, right? Than any group of people in that state or community. Good, right. So the reason why I wanted to talk about that disconnect that some people have, where they understand that the exploitation or their privilege comes with exploitation, but they're detached from it. This again has to do with the idea of being alienated from our moral reality in the first place, right? This has to do with this absurd idea that people have, that they believe that morality can be abstracted from the material. And this gives the people the impression that some aspects of our life might not be moral issues, right? That we can abstract the morality from politics or from science or from whatever arena of life is beyond good and evil, whatever we've put up on the pedestal, whatever we've considered as necessary, right? Police, we were talking about the quote-unquote necessity of police, right? That rather than getting to talk about how evil they are, whenever we bring that up, people go, but they're necessary. Are you trying to say that we want murderers and rapists to just run around our society and it be mayhem? No, that's not what anybody's saying. But defund the police does mean that we need to do something else with those funds. It's not just that we do away with police. We need to have something to fill that void, that vacuum. And that's building dual state powers. That's building horizontal power. That's building revolutionary power. Because we should be in charge of policing our own communities and not leaving it up to a Gestapo of people who is an elite class of citizens who enjoys a whole bunch of privilege, and one of those privileges is being able to execute whoever they want to whenever their lives are threatened. Right? That's an institution that is not just and should not exist, and we should oppose the evilness of that institution instead of accepting that a class of people who is willing to execute us on command is necessary, right? We need to move away from that. But necropolitics is the lens that helps us understand both that the state is going to always present police as being necessary, and a lot of people's ideas of culture and society are going to necessarily include that as well. It's not necessary, but people's perspective is going to assume that that kind of thing is necessary, is what I mean. Yes, alienation from control over the civil and economic means of production. Exactly, Jay. Okay, so I'm going to get us over now, finally. I was working on all of that to work us over to this, right? When it comes to our problem solving, a lot of time, what interferes with our ability to problem solve is our own ego. And our ego, as I talked about on last stream, or let me set it this way. What Anarch is about to start talking about, all of the problems that Anarch is about to describe, all of the things that we are going to be discussing in this video are all tied to this alienating of the moral community, of the moral reality, of people being, believing that there is some individual which exists apart from the culture and society, apart from their community. That thing doesn't exist. The individual who exists as an autonomous decision maker outside of the community does not exist. It's not even something that we can reasonably think about in a hypothetical thought experiment. Well, we'll get to that. I'll talk about the lonely corpuscle a little bit more in a minute. But let's get to the video now. And the whole time Anarch is talking, again, keep thinking about how the ego is the idea of an individual that can somehow exist without the community, or divorced or abstracted from the community in which they are.
Sim.Sam says, Daniel, you say you enjoy and get a lot out of conflict. What is the best approach to get into that mindset, you think? Because I really want to enjoy it, honestly. probably the first step is stop attaching your ego to it. I think what is happening with a lot of people when they get into conflict is they're immediately thinking about themselves. What does this person think of them? What does that mean about them? And they start thinking lots of self-thoughts. I think that people need to stop thinking as many self-thoughts. Stop thinking about you and yourself when you get into arguments and start thinking about ideas, the concepts that are being discussed. People need to separate themselves from their ideas. Okay, I've suggested this before and people give me rebuttals and all this. Like, some people can't separate their ideas from themselves. No, that's not true. You absolutely can discuss ideas dispassionately, and you should try. It's a good thing to be able to discuss ideas dispassionately. If you cannot separate yourself from your ideas, then you need to learn to practice more free thought that is less inhibited by ego and self. You need to start thinking about how you can disattach yourself from ideas so you can look at them objectively. Then, don't get me wrong, find your subjective relation to the analysis that you find. But if you cannot disattach yourself from your ideas and look at them from an outside perspective, you probably don't understand your ideas as well as you think you do. And that also means that when you get into a conversation, if somebody starts to undermine your ideas, you're probably not prepared to counter-argue because you never thought about your ideas deep enough to understand where somebody might counter-argue against you. You didn't think about rebuttals and then your rebuttal to the rebuttals and then the rebuttal to your rebuttals to the rebuttals and so on and so on and so on. If you want to be prepared to have conflict, healthy conflict, you need to put yourself in a process where you're thinking about your ideas dispassionately. You need to be able to think about your ideas from every other perspective. Inside my head, anytime I entertain an idea, I'm immediately entertaining the opposing viewpoints to those ideas in the worst ways possible. I'm thinking about people who have the exact opposite perspectives from me. I'm thinking about how a fascist might respond. I'm thinking about how liberals might respond. I'm thinking about how authoritarian leftists might respond. I'm thinking about how any variety of other ideologies and viewpoints might respond. What I find is that when you have that sort of preparation beforehand and you're already in the mode of questioning your own ideas all the time, when somebody presents a viewpoint, you're not going to be nearly as intimidated. You're not going to be afraid that they're undermining your personhood. You've already done that in your own head. You've already thought your way through all of the objections. You already have rebuttals to the objections. And that will create within you a sense of calm. But you're not going to be able to do that insofar as that you attach your personhood to your ideas too much. If you attach yourself to your ideas too much, you are going to get nervous, you're going to get anxious, you're going to get angry, you're going to lash out at people when they disagree with you. And that is completely non-productive. You know, it's funny, we have this whole thing about don't tone police people. I just totally disagree. Everybody needs to do a little bit better policing their tone. We are on an internet where everyone is such a fucking asshole to each other all the time. People really need to calm the fuck down and say things rationally, because it is helping no one that everyone is constantly lashing out at each other every single time that anyone questions them. It leads to incredibly unhealthy spaces for us to be in. And it leads to basically certain types of people just trying to weaponize these behaviors in our spaces in order to create huge clusterfucks where everybody gets angry at each other. Like, it's really unhealthy and our spaces need to do better. We're back to that again. Our spaces need to do better. And this is one of those aspects. In order for people to get better at conflict, they need to stop having so much self-thought and stop self-centering so much. They need to disconnect themselves from their ideas and be able to think about their ideas objectively from the outside. Obviously, nobody can think purely objectively, but try to think from the outside as much as possible. And that involves, by the way, being brutally, ruthlessly critical of your own ideas. I'm trying to really get this across to you. When you think about the enemy viewpoint and you think about how they might respond to your questions or your contentions, you need to not stop halfway. I think a lot of people are afraid of thinking certain things and walking through those things and taking them to fruition and slowly and calmly and rationally within their head debunking the opponent's viewpoint. if you constantly keep yourself away from thinking things that make you scared, and you like, oh no, I can't think about that thing. I can't think about this horrific opponent viewpoint, because then I might, like, I don't know, it's this weird thing where you think you'll become that viewpoint if you think about it too much. Absolutely wrong. You are unprepared to deal with that viewpoint now because you haven't thought about it enough. You need to be prepared to sort of be in this mode of conflict with other viewpoints all the time, and you need to be inside of your head critically examining your own viewpoints. And you'll find that if you're constantly in that position of thinking through the opponent's position all the way to the end and developing their counter argument as well as conceivably possible, and then developing your counter argument to their best counter argument, and then repeating this process, you will be so good at conflict.
This is something that I started to talk about a little bit, but didn't get very in-depth into last time. So I interrupted Anarch last time where he was first starting to talk about being critical with one's own argument. In the process of developing a logical argument, formally, for those of you, I'm a logician, formally. For those who engage in logic as logicians, this is part of the process, right? You establish your terms, you arrange your terms, which establishes your propositions, and then you arrange your premises. Once you have constructed your argument, then there is a critical phase where you assume that the argument that you have just put together is garbage. You assume that there's something wrong with it, and you have to figure out why it's wrong, why it's garbage. This argument that you just made for you, meaning to argue for something that you believe in, you need to figure out why this is now garbage, right? And what Anarch just was talking about is the other side of this. So this is what we should do when we are producing our own positive account, is that we should produce the account, be critical of it, and then assume it's garbage so that we can tweak it, we can retool, we can adjust the terms, we can adjust the propositions, whatever we need to do, so that we've created a better argument than the first one that we had first made. Syllogism. Yeah. That's funny. Good philosophy humor there. No one's going to get the syllogism, but yeah. Why is this argument unsound? Right, exactly. But the other side of this that Anarch was talking about is called steel manning the other argument. You want to steel man the argument that you're trying to overcome, right? So you have an argument that you're trying to posit. You want your argument to overcome some other proposition, some other state of affairs, some other statement about what's right or wrong, right? What you want to do is the arguments that are against yours, you want to build those arguments up and make those arguments as strong as you can possibly make them. You make your opponent's arguments as strong as you possibly can, so that when you overcome those arguments with your argument, you have a very strong argument that has overcome a strong argument. A tactic that a lot of people use is straw manning, rather than steel manning an argument and then overcoming that better argument with an even better argument. What they do is they prop up a weak and easily toppled argument. And then when they overcome that, they have accomplished nothing. Because it was a straw man argument to begin with, it wasn't even a real argument. So their overcoming of that argument isn't accomplishing anything. That a straw man will usually undermine itself. It doesn't need you to dissemble it, though people often do. That's the trick with throwing out a straw man. It's not just throwing out a red herring. A red herring is intended to distract the conversation or to derail the conversation and bring it to another route. With straw man, you prop up a purposely weak argument that if your interlocutor wants to continue arguing, they have to stop, disassemble the straw man to get to an actual argument to be able to continue to have a conversation. And most people don't want to do that, because when you throw up a straw man, most people will go, fuck you, and walk away, right? Because you shouldn't engage with that. It's bad faith. When people are throwing out trash arguments that are easily overcome, don't bother wasting your time with it. Yeah, steel manning. It's making the opponent's argument as strong as you possibly can, so you can overcome that strong argument with an even more better argument. That's steel manning, as opposed to straw manning the argument, where, again, it's usually a position that nobody holds. It's not a real position. A good example that I use in the classroom is that the liberals believe that passing gun laws will keep criminals from buying guns, right? This is a straw man argument. It is not the case that anybody is passing gun laws believing that criminals are going to obey those laws. That's not why we have laws. That's not why we have laws about guns. That's not why people are advocating for laws about guns, right? That's not a real position. But it's a straw man that people often throw up that requires, if you want to have a conversation with that person about gun rights, you have to disassemble that straw man in order to have any kind of meaningful conversation with them, right? So it's a tactical defense that people use, straw manning, so that they don't have to actually defend their position. They can just throw this garbage argument, and most people don't want to bother. Right, most people don't bother with trying to dismantle a straw man. Yeah, informal versus formal fallacies. Yeah. Oh yeah, steel. Yeah, thank you, steel man. Like, yes, thank you for spelling that out, making it more clear. That does make more sense. Everyone's like, Manning who? Who's Manning? All right, cool. Let's get back to the video.
Not only will you be good at like winning a debate, okay, because that's one way that you get really good at winning a debate, but it's also going to make you so much more capable of having calm, reflective dialogue with people. I want to emphasize that part the most, okay? This is not only important in winning debates, it lets you stay calm and have deeper conversations with people instead of just freaking out, lashing out at them, insulting them, trying to get them to stop. The reason you're doing that is because you're afraid. You're afraid of what they're saying. You're afraid of not having a prepared response to them. Or, and don't get me wrong, there are certain circumstances where you're lashing out because you realize this person is like the enemy. Don't get me wrong. There are certain occasions where somebody has said something to me. We're having a calm, reflective dialogue, and they say something to me, and it fills me with a sense of anger and disgust because I realize, oh, if there were a civil war or a genocide, this person would be running concentration camps. But I want to say, even in that occasion, even though like this fire like wells up in my chest, it still serves me best to calmly tear their arguments apart. And I might say, I'm generally very well prepared for the sorts of arguments they're going to make because I've already been thinking through them. I've already thought through, oh, they could say this, but then I would respond this. Oh, they could say that, but I could respond with such and such. And if you're prepared like that, you're going to probably be able to maintain your composure a lot more when the time comes. But that requires you to practice reflection and to be able to dispassionately observe your own viewpoints and to disconnect yourself from them a little bit.
Another point that I wanted to talk about came up on last stream too. I've got a little bit of pushback against Anarch. And it's just a little bit, again, to be clear, it's a very little bit of pushback about this tone policing thing. So, and the chatter in last stream that brought this up said, should I be expected to maintain my composure in the face of somebody who wants to annihilate me? Right? Am I expected to offer decorum to the literal fucking Nazi who is arguing for my execution? Right? And no. That's not exactly what Anarch is saying either. Right, so there's a little bit of clarification, a little bit of nuance to be made here. What we are concerned with here is trying to resolve problems with the people with whom we are trying to build coalition and organizing and build revolutions. We are not going to be building revolutions with the Nazi. Right? This presupposes that the person with whom you're working is somebody who has at least some good faith reason to be there. They might be engaging in bad faith, but they have a good faith reason to be there. Right? We're going to have some kind of aligned principles such that you are not going to be face to face with somebody who wants your literal annihilation. That's not what we're talking about. But I do think that there is the Social Security take back comment. The Social Security take back. I still don't understand the Social Security take back comment. But my point is that the point that I would like to make is the point that I made on last stream, that it should not ever be the case that somebody who is the victim of some oppression is the only advocate advocating on their own behalf. And they are advocating against those who want to do them harm. If that's the case, then we as comrades have all failed that comrade. It should not be the case that the oppressed is their own only advocate. Right? And that's the kind of situation that we're talking about, where we would be concerned with some kind of reactionary tone policing. I think that Anarch's overall message is a really very important, really very powerful one. That the better strategy is to be prepared to eviscerate somebody's argument. The better strategy is to not be reactionary and to respond. The better strategy is to keep your calm, to keep your decorum, to make sure that you are always in a principled stance, in a principled position, and arguing from principles that matter, that are in coherence with means ends unity. right? That those are all the things that we want to be concerned about. And as long as our tone policing is oriented towards those ends, then I don't see a problem. Right, then there isn't a problem. But it's just, I think maybe a lot of the qualm I have here is with the term of tone policing in the first place. Because a lot of times it does come across as saying, well, those minorities need to not be so uppity about their oppression, which is what tone policing often comes across as, right? And that's not, again, I'm not trying to put words in Anarch's mouth. That's not at all what Anarch is talking about. That is not at all what Anarch is talking about. But I want to talk about some of these other ideas around it and try to bring some more clarity to the conversation. I saw the first time y'all watched this. Oh, okay. I saw the chatter made a comment on something related to taking away their Social Security. Was it Social Security? I thought it was violence, but yeah, yes, that's what I was talking about. Is that other chatter who was talking about that? I'm glad you watched it. Anyway, that's awesome. You went back and watched the VOD. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Is I think that the situation that the chatter brought up last week is not actually really the kind of situation that applies to what Anarch is talking about in the first place, right? So there's a disconnect between what we were talking about and what Anarch was talking about. But also there is the greater disconnect that tone policing is not an entirely inappropriate thing. There are some situations where it's very important for us in our communities and in our organizing and in the way that we're problem solving, that we are doing it a certain way. And that way is with at least some amount of dispassionate, right? Some kind of objectiveness rather than a complete disassociation. Right, did I miss anything? Did I forget to talk about something? Sometimes when I finish saying the things that I have meant to say, I feel like, well, it seemed like it was more in my head, and now that it's out, I feel like there's something that I missed. But that happens. So sorry if I skipped anything there, if I glossed over anything there. Let's get back to the video.
If you can't, you're probably always going to have this sort of reactive sort of approach to conflict, and conflict is always going to seem like a threat to you, and you're going to have a hard time as well delineating enemies from friends who just have slightly different viewpoints from you, because the truth is that if you
right, and that's the thing, right? It should be very clear who is enemy and who it is that you have slight disagreements with. And I think that's really a very important aspect to this. What we are talking about are strategies for problem solving, for resolving differences that we have with people with whom we are trying to come together and build stuff, right? That's so there is an implied camaraderie, or there's applied common goal. There's some kind of implied shared interest that we would assume is taking place in the relationship, in the discourse. That's what I meant, in the discourse anyway.
Haven't seen where entire lines of logic go, you might misassess some component of an enemy logic, which appears necessary but is just related somehow, right? So this happens all the time, for example, with like individualist anarchists, where they think that organization is the state. It's like, no, the state is a form of organization, but not all organizations are states, right? The reason why this is happening is a knee-jerk response. It's a lack of critical reflection. They're not thinking about, oh, what are all the kinds of organizations that could be? What are the key characteristics of the state? And they think the key characteristic of the state is just something superfluous, like that it rests over a geographical body, or that it is the place where people come together to make decisions that they will all abide by. These are in no way characteristics of the state, but if you lack critical reflection about what the state is and what organizations are and how they function, then you can knee-jerk come to this sort of response. And this is just one example. There's many, many examples. But I noticed I've answered like several questions about this today. I think that this is how our spaces need to learn to engage. And a part of the reason why I think we don't do the things I'm saying is because not enough people that are in our spaces spend nearly enough time talking to normal people. Normal people, not other radicals. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like neglect your community. Your other radicals are valuable. They keep you sane, to be honest. Like, it's so hard to live in this world otherwise. But you need to be prepared to stay calm and just like discuss these ideas when you talk with normal people. And you're going to find normal people say so many things that, wow, that sounds like a dog whistle. And it's like, it's not. It's not. They just don't know any better. They heard it on the news, or a friend of theirs said it the other day, and, you know, they didn't really think critically about it. It's just a thing they think now. And our spaces train people to not be prepared for these moments, to instead take small transgressions or incorrect ideas, because people have incomplete and inconsistent web of ideology. Things are inconsistent. They don't think about how all the parts fit together. We hear one thing and we go, oh my God, what the that is a fucked up fascist thing for you to say. You must be a fascist. It's like, no, that's the wrong way to think of it. Instead, understand that most people just have inconsistent ideologies. Okay, they believe this thing over here and that thing over here and this thing over here and this thing over here, and they contradict each other because they're not thinking about how everything fits together. Most normal people are not spending their days thinking about how their political theory intricately weaves together. Hypnosis says, hierarchy teaches us to be this way. So long as hierarchy exists, we will keep having the same problems over and over. You know, I think you're...
Yeah, I wanted that is exactly what he's talking about, Jane. And there's a really good balance, right? Going out and talking to regular people, being in the regular real world with other regular people is a valuable thing to, you know, for people to do, to go out and touch grass. But also, like he said, I completely agree with engaging with your other radical comrades is how you stay sane, right? I could not imagine not doing stream. I mean, I really love you all. And I love this, and I love the engagement, and I love that we get to talk about this stuff. And this is really very grounding for me, because when I am in the classroom, when I am dealing with students, I am in a neoliberal world. I have to be able to put one foot in that world so that I can have meaningful conversations with those neoliberals. I must. And it's very, very painstaking. It's an exercise in futility. It is exhausting. And so it's really very helpful for me to come to be grounded here with you all, and to remember the things that are really important and that which really matters. And remember that there are people who understand, right, the material conditions, who understand where we are in history, who understand what's at stake. It's refreshing to be around other people who have those same kinds of understandings that I do, because I have to put my foot out there in the neoliberal world. I have to. For me to do my job, I must. But also that's how I provide an inroad for some of those people. I'm planting the seeds and providing the roads, the avenues of intellectual insight that will get them to read Marx and get them to read communism, or get them to entertain anti-capitalism. At least that's my new kind of goal, is that I can be openly anti-capitalist in the classroom, but that's not necessarily being pro-communist or pro-socialist or pro-anarchist. It's just that, you know, I can be anti-capitalist, and enough of my other students are already anti-capitalist that I just feed them. I just keep giving them some fuel, and then they just light the whole discussion board up, right? Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Right, to some degree. I think you're right insofar as hierarchy creates this competitive culture, but I do want to emphasize that it just could be otherwise. We have a choice in how we want to maintain our own culture, and there have historically been cultures that don't deal with it this way. You know, for example, I look at the Zapatistas. The Zapatistas have a much more discursive culture, and that's because they are better. I think it's that if I'm just being like really broad here, and I mean this in the most Buddhist sense, we have too much ego in our culture. We have too many I thoughts. We're thinking too much about ourselves. We're very self-centering. Every dialogue, we try to center ourselves in it. We try to figure out how that's about us. That statement is about me. My ideas are being threatened there. We need to think less about ourselves, and we need to think more about the world as it is and what our part is in that world. We need to start from how is the world actually, and then where am I in that? What does that mean for me? That's where the self-thought should come from. We have too big egos. That's the best way to put it. Our egos are too big.
Yeah, center ideas, not us. Absolutely. We should be rallying around housing for all. We should be rallying around health care for all. We should be rallying around food sovereignty. Not around people, not around political campaigns, not around slogans, right? We should be rallying around doing things, building power in the world. And the only way that we build real power in the world is by feeding people and housing people and giving them the freedom to be their authentic selves.
We need to make our egos smaller and think more about things as they are. That's not easy, though. Don't get me wrong. That requires hard conversations. Alex Pereira's alt says, thoughts on Machno's ideas about collective responsibility? It's like very close to what I'm talking about here, actually. I think that we do have collective responsibility. And I think that's one of the things about horizontal power structures is they demand responsibility. And that's been said by so many anarchist theorists. But I think that a lot of people are not recognizing that that responsibility starts now. That starts now. If solidarity, equality of structural power, and freedom are to be these sort of important concepts within anarchism, we have a responsibility to safeguard them. And you know that word solidarity is about bonds of cooperation between us. We have a responsibility to safeguard the bonds of cooperation between us. And that's pretty much what I've been laying out, is people shirking that duty, is people not paying due respect to their responsibility to maintain solidaric connections with people who are their friends and family and loved ones and fellow radicals who they're struggling with. Solidarity is important. Atomization is bad.
So again, as I've stressed over and over and over and over again in the channel, the only thing that really, really, really matters are the bonds that you have with other moral agents in the world in the same time and place as you. That's where all of the solutions are. That's the only place where we will find solutions. is in that real world where we are with other moral agents. The material reality that most of us ignore for most of reality.
To be working against atomization. And it seems like our spaces don't care at all. Seems like our spaces of every single kind are highly individualistic and practice zero collective responsibility when it comes to solidarity. They seem to basically do nothing. They would rather protect people who aren't even present a lot of the time than actually try to make good with the people that are right there in the discussion with them. Solidarity is a buzzword many times. People don't seem to take it seriously. I'm suggesting people take it seriously.
100%. So this is also really a very awesome, powerful video. This is a good one to share too. It's in the Discord as well, but I'll also put the link here. If you liked the video, please go and like that video, because that will matter for Anarch's numbers and for their attraction and for their algorithm. That's the word for. Good. There was a lot more stuff that I wanted to do today. A lot more stuff. Kai Matara, I didn't really get to much of the stuff I wanted to talk about on your things, but that's okay. We'll do that next stream. We got through most of what I wanted to do today. Was spending some time clarifying my ramblings from last stream. There were a few points where I was arguing along a certain line, and my brain started moving ahead, and I got a little bit ahead of myself, and there were a few places where I forgot to explain all of the things and all of the jumps and all of the connections that I was making last week. So I was trying to make some of that more clear. And if some of this stream seems repetitive, it's because that's why. The ideas that I was trying to work out last stream, hey, where'd it go? Oh, I've minimized it. Are complicated. Right. These are the main thrusts. So maybe I should put this in Discord because it's kind of too big to just fit here. Right. That this is all stuff that we know. This is something that we need to work out. There's an issue here. Right. All of this needs to be worked out. Anyways, there's still more stuff to be worked out here that I don't think I've quite clearly enunciated. But most of it, I think that I've done a pretty good job of getting a good handle on, or getting a start on anyway, so that next stream we'll be able to pick up and hopefully get a little bit further along in our discussion. So we made some great progress today. I think this was a pretty fantastic discussion. For those of you who haven't figured out my patterns of behaviors yet, I am wrapping it up for the end of stream because I'm tired. I don't even know how long I've been streaming. Actually, it's been 2.5 hours since it was disconnected, and I had been streaming for over an hour before. So I don't know what the total time is. Now I lost the thing that I was doing. There we go. Let's see who we will want to... What? Oh, that's too bad. Okay, well, that's wild. Okay, it's all right. Never mind. And I already know why. It's okay. We'll talk to them later. Yeah, it's been a while, right? We, there we go. 3 hours and 20 minutes roughly. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. Yeah, with a break there in between. Right, it wasn't a very, very long break. There was about 7 or 5 minutes where I wasn't streaming there in between, but yeah, great stream. And thank you all for helping me work through this difficult stuff. It's not easy. Right, and again, I said this last week, and I want to keep asserting this. I don't have this figured out. I don't know. I'm not here to teach you. I'm here to learn with you. So thank you for being here to learn with me. Thank you for all of your help and all of your information and all of your feedback, and for sometimes disagreeing with me. That's one of my favorite things about you all, is that you don't have any problems with having different viewpoints than me, and then expressing those viewpoints, and then we get to talk about that. That's awesome. So thank you all for being here and being awesome. And until the next time I see you, be excellent to each other.